What's going on, guys? We are here. We're in the train station, and we love hanging out in the train station. Today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about how to teach your dog to come on command. It's probably one of the most popular exercises that we work on with our dog training students. It's for sure the most important thing you need to work on with your dog. It's basically like it's like a safety net. Being able to use it when you are in an emergency situation. You need to have a reliable recall. We've heard so many stories. Students will reach out to us and say, "Oh, you won't believe what happened. But my dog got out, or we were somewhere and a deer ran by, and I called my dog to come, and they came back." So
Such a good feeling.
Oh, it was a great feeling for us as instructors. Probably a super good feeling for the owners as well, because it's such an important thing. But today we're going to break it down for you. We're going to talk about the 3 steps that you need to focus on so that you can have a successful recall each and every time. I'm Ken Steep.
I'm Cal McCann.
And welcome back to McCann Dogs. The other cool thing that I wanted to mention today is Kale had this great idea that we do some sort of challenge.
No, I didn't, guys. He's making this up.
And that, I've actually got the old from 2 weeks ago stream. I'm going to have to change.
Oh, I'm the moderator man
you're
today.
Dan, the moderator man today.
Nice.
But we were talking, we're going to do this challenge today that's all about, in this, actually funny that Dan's name would pop up, because today's stream, at the end of the stream today, we're going to do a challenge head to head. It's going to get down and dirty. You're going to see us in true competition mode, but we're going to be treat stacking. And that's actually Dan's idea. I was talking to Dan earlier today and I said, what would be a good challenge that Kale and I could do?
I'm going to crush you.
We'll see. We're going to see just exactly what happens. But we're going to do a treat stacking, and the loser has to eat the other stack of treats. I'm super excited about this, as you can probably tell.
Like the winning stack of treats?
Yeah, because the higher stack would be the more disgusting stack. And that is, it sounds like a lot of fun to me.
I'm already thinking of a strategy.
Absolutely. So can you give us an overview of kind of what we're going to chat about today?
So we're going to talk a little bit about teaching your dog to come when they're called, and we refer to this as a recall. And it's probably one of the most important things you can teach your dog for safety and just for overall convenience. If you have a dog that comes back when you call them reliably every time, the amount of freedom that you can give your dog and allow them to, enjoy life, because you don't have to have them on a leash all the time, and, it's not so stressful. It really enhances your dog's life and your life with the dog as well, because, you can trust them a lot more. There are so many things to learn, though, about teaching your dog to come reliably. Yeah. Ways to motivate them, things to look out for, common mistakes. So those are basically the things that we're going to go through with you thoroughly today. We'll do a couple demonstrations as well. So hopefully by the end of it, you have a pretty clear idea on how you can go and work on this with your own dog. Yeah,
this is pretty exciting. And I see some familiar names in the chat. I see everybody jumping on. If you've been a train station regular, you know what we do each and every week. We want to know exactly where you're coming in from. So let us know in the roll call. Also, I get to roll this exciting graphic where I'm rolling across the thing. Give it a big thumbs up, because that's just the kind of train conductor I am.
Do you notice how he never puts me on the train, guys?
Yeah.
How come I'm not on the train?
It just makes sense. But let us know where you guys are watching from. I've seen a couple of people jumping in already. Theodore Whitmer says, hey, from Milton. CC Payne says Horville. Kiwi Kaylee says Illinois. I see Rhode Island. Southern California. Macon, Georgia, Cleveland, Ohio. Mama Lioness says, I'm coming in from London, Ontario. Welcome to the train station.
Dan
Not that far from us.
wants to be on the train, too.
We should put Dan in one of the train cars. I see Patricia from St. Louis, Minneapolis. I see Belinda from Florida, Texas.
London.
Adrian hates jazz at a cottage in Muskoka.
Oh,
very
jealous.
Very jealous of that.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Junius Oliver, London, UK. Thanks for jumping in on the train station, Junius. It is, I know it's pretty late at night. We actually have lots of viewers that join us from the UK, and I know it's a little bit later, so I appreciate you staying up late with us, hanging out here in the train station. But look at all this. Lima, Ohio, Connecticut, Montana, Southern Cali, Fredericton, New Brunswick, and on and on. I mean, the list just keeps going on. And I thank each and every one of you guys for joining us here in the train station. So let's talk about some of the common mistakes that people are making right off the bat, so that you can sort of do an inventory for yourself when you're teaching your dog or your puppy to come on command. there's some things that people commonly do that actually work against them. They think they're trying to help their dog out, but it's actually working against them. So let's talk about some of those things, because we know that your come command is your emergency recall, and we want you to use it as such. But what are some of the common things that people do that really, give their dog some conflicting information?
Well, I think the most common thing that people do is they overuse the word. So a lot of people will give, several commands for the dog to come. They'll repeat themselves over and over again. And sometimes what happens is they start changing the tone of their voice as they repeat the word. And often it gets more frantic or maybe a little bit more angry or annoyed sounding. And that's not really beneficial for your dog as well. Most of the time, dogs will not come when they're called. Most commonly because they don't know that they have to, or that they should, or that they want to yet. Or if they're being a little bit defiant, it means that you haven't built enough value for wanting your dog to come towards you. We built so much value in the exercise that our dogs almost can't wait for us to say the word, because we sort of brainwash them, so to speak, to just loving it so much because of how we present it to them. So overusing the word, I think, is probably the worst thing that people do wrong.
Yeah, without question. CC Payne mentioned the QR code's not working, and it may not be working if you're using your phone, but I think I dropped a link in the chat just in case you needed to use it. For sure.
We should probably mention too that if you're currently watching us on Facebook, make sure that you jump on over to YouTube so that you have the opportunity to ask us questions.
Yeah.
We can only see the chat on Facebook. YouTube.
Yeah.
So just head to our YouTube channel, and then you can ask us questions there.
For sure.
And then we'll be able to answer them throughout the live stream show.
Now, we do these live streams for you. So if you have a training question about your recall, make sure you drop it in the chat. And if you're not too familiar with the sort of the flow of our train station episodes, dog training train station episodes, then what we'll do is we'll present some information. We might do a couple of demos. We'll talk about kind of what we want you to know, and then we'll come back and we'll answer your questions. So at any point, make sure you let us know in the chat what's going on. So let's get to the beginning. So let's break this down a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the initial stages of your recall, and we'll work through the three different elements, almost three different skills that you're working on. And we break it up to, we break it down into three parts, like a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's easier to sort of compartmentalize each of these things because you can really focus on each of them and how they might all work together. But in today's train station, we're going to talk a little bit about at the beginning. What do you do at the very beginning when you're teaching your puppy or your new dog, whatever age they might be, to come when called? And then we're going to circle back around and talk about leveling up those skills. We want you to really understand that this come command can work wherever, whenever.
We should probably mention too, a lot of people will say, if I can't say my come command, what else can I do, to get my dog to come towards me? So, two things. Number one is try not to allow your dog to be in a position where they could ignore your recall until you're at the stage where you're in the testing phase, which we'll get into in a little bit. Second thing is, have another type of recall that's sort of like something a bit more casual and relaxed. You could use their name, for example, if they have a good response to name.
Yep.
Or we actually just have a casual recall that we use, and we use the command here for that. Here. We actually don't say come to our dogs very often, if ever, really, unless we absolutely need it. It's more of our emergency recall. And with the McCann method, in a lot of our exercises, we have found it to be highly successful to have a more formal version and a less informal informal version of the behavior, so that it's like that boy who cries wolf all the time. If you say come and it's this emergency recall and you're using it like when they're just like hanging out on the couch in the other room, it's not really. That's very different than if they're in the forest chasing after a deer. So we sort of have like an everyday command that we use, and then we have our come command that's it's a little bit more not serious, but we have a much smaller criteria for that.
Well, we have higher expectations.
Yeah.
We have higher expectations with the come command, where our dog will learn that that they need to come directly to us.
It's not optional.
There's no sniffing along the way, and that's something that you need to think about. Are you using come in all of these situations when it's an emergent scenario or when you're training, and when it's less important? Because I think Kale gave a great example with the boy who cried wolf. Every time we're using this come command, we want our dog to know that it's valuable. It's really important that they get to us, and for getting to us, they're going to get something really, really great. And we'll talk a little bit about what we can do for that. So, it seems like
beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, let's talk about the beginning with our young dogs at the beginning stage of their training. And this is something that
this is one of my favorite parts, actually.
For sure. And it's something you can do. And I saw someone had mentioned, let's see here, I think Theodore Whitmer had mentioned in the chat, I'm getting a golden retriever puppy in 2 weeks. When would you recommend to start training after bringing home? Now, we have lots and lots of puppy training videos on the channel. But for your recall command specifically, now you can start at 8 weeks, Theodore, when you're working with your puppy. But for the recall, we're going to start working on that like 15, 16, 17 weeks. That's when we're going to start. If you have a new puppy, that's where we would start to work on it in a more formal sense. However, with this exercise we're going to talk about right now, you can do this kind of thing. It's not necessarily part of your come, but we're building motivation for that word.
You can do this with any age of dog.
Absolutely. So let's talk about how we do that. How are we building drive? Because what we want is a dog who is so enthusiastic about hearing that word.
It comes too quickly.
Yeah. So what do we do? What sort of things do we do?
So we do quite a few things to build drive, but one of the things that we'll do is something that's called a restraint recall. So you can do this on your own, and it's even more fun if you have somebody that will, be your partner and help you with this. So typically what we'll do is we'll have one person hold the dog, and we'll have the other person that's calling the dog stand directly in front, and they're going to have a super high value reward that we know the dog wants. It could be like a really special treat. It could be their favorite toy, whatever it might be. And the fun part is that you get to stand in front of your dog and tease them with that reward for a few seconds.
And we'll show you in just a second exactly how to do that.
Basically, you just want to get the dog like almost to the point where like, oh my gosh, I want that thing so bad. And you're building the drive and you're building the momentum. And when you see that you have that drive and that focus, you're going to then introduce the command to them that's come. And once you say come, we're going to use another thing that really encourages speed and reliability, and that is igniting the dog's chase drive. One of the absolute best things you could do when you're teaching your dog to come when they're called is to run away from your dog, move away from your dog. A lot of people make the common mistake of chasing after their dog to try and catch them, and that's almost the worst thing you could do, because a lot of dogs think that that's a really fun game, and then they almost encourage you to chase them, and your recall just goes out the window. So run away from your dog, and when you do that, your dog's likely to chase after you, and then of course when they get to you, you're going to have big rewards, which we'll get into. But it's really important that you learn what type of rewards really really help your dog. Do they have a favorite treat? Do they have a specific toy that would be special enough to set aside and use only for this exercise?
I noticed Patricia mentioned my Ruby's also GSD in 11 months. I'm having the same issues, and we're going to jump into that a little bit more. But if you're having trouble with your recall, you can go back to these basics. In just a moment, we're going to head back there, and I'll show you a couple tricks. But I've done this with my dog, who was probably 27 months. We have adult dogs that come into classes that really aren't sure about the recall, or their owner has used that word so much that it just doesn't mean anything anymore. You can go back to basics and really help your dog to be successful by doing this. Why don't we head over?
Yeah, I just want to say another thing that's really important. Yep. So when you're training the recall, when you're training any new exercise, really, regardless of whether you've done this before or not, when you're retraining or starting from the beginning, it is imperative that when you do this, you set your dog up to have a 100% success rate. So when you do this, we highly suggest that your dog is on some type of leash or long line so they can't run the other direction, and that you are positive that your dog's going to move towards you. And the easiest way to be able to tell that is, where's your dog looking?
Yeah.
Are they looking at you with intent? Are they looking at you and they're focused? And, if you're practicing and you're standing in front of your dog and you're teasing them with this great thing and your dog's like looking around and not really paying attention, that's not a good time to say come, because now you're opening up a possibility for your dog not to listen to you. So it's really important that you read your dog's body language and you can tell that they're in fact focused. And if at any time they get distracted, they're not focused, you need to not say come, move in nice and close to your dog again, build up that drive and that excitement by using a reward. And if the reward's not working, try something different that does work,
Yep.
and then go back to your recall from there.
Yeah, so let's head over. Let's head over to the train station and get this thing started. You guys know how much I love to toot during the train station, so here comes a big toot. And we will head over. We're just going to get Hippie Shake ready. And now I'm going to take us over to camera 2. Turn the lights on. Get us a little bit brighter. And we can head over. I see C. Ellis knows the language here.
Yeah.
Time. Okay, Kel, can you just give me an audio check real quick?
Yep. Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, so let's talk. Let's get into how we're going to build that drive and motivation. Hopefully looks like we've got enough room to practice this.
Hi, Shaky.
And again, this is the kind of thing you can do with your puppy. This is the kind of thing you can do with your young adult dog if they're new to you or if you're trying to retrain the command. But what are we going to do here?
So what I've done is I have Hippie on a leash. Actually, I have Hippie on 2 leashes. One's for Ken and one's for me. And why we have 2 leashes is your helper is going to use this leash to hold your dog back so that they cannot come to you before you say come, for obvious reasons. It's also really important that your trainer, your helper, understands to let go of the leash when you say come.
That's a surprisingly important part.
Because a lot of people are so intrigued with the dog they forget to let go. So now I have a bunch of Hippie's dinner here. We didn't actually even feed her all of the dinner because we knew we were going to use her as a demonstration dog here. So I have some of her dinner in on my hand here. Now she's really engaged with Ken right now. So
who wouldn't be, right?
So before I call her, I need to make sure I have the attention on me. So I'm going to put this mitt full of food down, and I'm going to put it right on her nose. Good girl. Now, my leash is on, but not at any time during this phase of training am I going to pull or drag her to me. The leash is on as a backup so she can't run away, but I'm not going to add any negative stimulation by pulling and tugging. This leash needs to stay loose. It's only positive reinforcement from here. So I'm going to hold the leash with one hand, some treats in the other hand. Make sure I'm not going to back into anything. I see that she's focused, so I'm going to say that magic word. Come. Yes, good girl. I'm going to back away, and if I was not in a little basement, I would probably take off and run way more than that, and I would reward several times when she gets me. Now, Hippie's been through some training, so she's defaulted into an automatic little sit in front, which is a step that we add much later in our training. If your dog does that, fine, but it's not required. All I'm looking for is that my dog is close to me and that she's engaged with me when I reward her.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing to remember, especially if you're at the beginning stages of your training with your dog. So many people are insistent that the dog gets in a sit, and they're waiting for that sit. And all of a sudden, the value from that word, that moving toward you, it means just a little bit less. So in the beginning, when your dog gets to you, feed them, and have a handful of great treats. Have something that your dog really loves, and feed them one at a time.
Yeah, that's really important.
People are it's really common for people to just give their dog, like feeding a horse, giving them all of the treats. Your dog's going to see more value by spacing those out, so they get one, then another, then another, then another, then another, rather than all 5 at the same time. So think about that as you're rewarding your dog when they come into you.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a common mistake that people often do too. So if she's turned towards me again, I need to make sure she's paying attention. A lot of people will stand all the way at the end of the leash like this. And again, my leash is tight, and I'm really opening up the possibility for Hippie to look around at all of these distractions that are here. So you don't want to start like this. You want to start nice and close to your dog. Make it really easy. When you're practicing, if you're getting your dog focused and during some time they get distracted, put your food right in front of the dog's nose again and re-engage them before you call them to come.
Yeah.
It is so important that you have attention from your dog when you say come, so that you don't say the word and have them, not come to you. The other thing that's really important is when I call her, ready, set, come. Yay, good girl. Even though I'm only a foot in front of her, I'm going to call her like she's like in the backyard or running away from me. You have to be enthusiastic with your tone of voice. The other thing that I did there is I isolated the word come. So I said ready, set, which are sort of her priming words that I say to get her excited, but it wasn't ready, set, come, or ready, set, Hippie, come. It's like, what did I even say there? So I'm going to get her excited, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to very loudly and happily say come before I back away.
And what is how many times did Kale say Hippie's name? And I can't see the chat. So I'm going to imagine that you've had an opportunity to guess, but how many times did you hear Hippie's name in this exercise? Yes. The answer is 0. We're not using our dog's name at this point. We're going to reintroduce it at the very end, but right now we want to focus on that word. We're going to make sure that that word, every time your dog hears it, it is the best thing in the entire world. We're really focusing on the motivation on that single come, command, and then they're being rewarded for it.
Yeah, we don't train our recall with the name initially, because we don't expect the dogs to always come to us when we say their name, because sometimes we use it as an attention getter. I might say, Hippie, go get on your bed, or Hippie, get your bone, or Hippie this, Hippie that. It's just to get her attention so I can ask her to do something else. So you don't want to use their name when you're training this. You can add it later, but you need to isolate that one word. The last little tip I wanted to give you is about rewarding your dog when they're in front. Now, she's nice and close to me, but this is something that people often do. They say, come, and then they do this. Yes. And they reward their dog as they're bent over, and they're rewarding really, really far away. Now, if this is where Hippie gets all her cookies, when I call her, she's going to run right to the location where she gets all of her treats. And I don't ever want to have to reach and try to grab a hold of her. I want her to feel very comfortable and confident, move in nice and close to me. So if she stops too far away, I'm not going to give her a treat out there. I'm going to take those treats, come in here close, baby girl. I'm going to make her come in nice and close. Another thing that I will often do, especially with baby puppies, is as I'm letting them feed, I'll take this other hand and I'll put it in their collar. And that's so that if I need to hook a leash on in the future, I need to pick her up, I don't have a dog that jumps out of the way when I go to grab her collar. I condition her from the beginning that when a human hand comes close, treats come your way, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this in a recent video where we talked about how you can get control of your dog. And I know a lot of you guys at home probably have very energetic and exciting dogs. It's a great thing to remember, to build that sort of circle of value. Right against, Kayla, you saw Kayla almost feeding against her shins. Because in an emergent scenario, you want your dog right here so you can take control of them. You know, you want your dog to really understand that the closer they can be to you, the better. We want to build all that value there, and you're going to start to see that bleed into some of your other exercises as well, which is a great thing. So let's head on back. We'll see what everyone has to say, answer some questions, and then we'll move on to the middle. This could be a long live stream. If this, don't forget, later, you're going to see Kale and I compete in a challenge, and then Kale's going to have to eat all of the dog treats.
Nope, Karen's going to have to eat all of the dog treats.
Okay, let's head on back to the sitting down part. Okay, let's see what's happening in the chat. We might talk a little bit about some of this stuff in a moment. So let's move on just to the middle for a second, because in the beginning, the middle of your
the middle.
Or sorry, when you're starting your recall command, your come command with your dog, the middle is a little bit less important. We talked a little bit about it. So we're separating this with the command, the come command, then the time that your dog takes to get to you, and then an ending. So once they've arrived at you. So we sort of breezed over a little bit of those three steps, but that's how I want you to think about it at home. I want you to really isolate what's happening when I say come, what's happening on the way to me, and then what's happening at the ending when the dog is sitting in front of me. So let's talk just about the middle for
so with the beginning, we talked about what we expect of the dog and what are common issues. With the middle of the recall, we expect the dog to go from point A to point B, point A being wherever they happen to be at the time, point B being you. And we don't want the dog to dilly-dally or get distracted along the way. We want the dog to come directly to you. So when you're practicing this, that is what is so significant about having the dog on a leash, because if your dog starts moving towards you and then halfway, between them and you, they decide they're going to go in a different direction, the leash is on to prevent them from actually successfully running away from you or going to do their own thing. So that's why the leash is so important. If at any time you feel like your dog's attention and intention is not to come towards you, you want to reintroduce that reward that's driving them to you. So, get the food down a little closer. I've trained a lot of dogs with both food and a toy. If the dog really likes a toy, I might wiggle a toy near them again, but I will refocus them on the way to me. A common mistake that happens during the middle portion of the recall is a lot of handlers accidentally or inadvertently, without knowing, pull the dog by the leash towards them, and they pull and drag them because they're trying to make sure that the dog doesn't do it wrong. And if you're teaching your dog, two things that are not so good about doing that. Number one is eventually our goal is that our dog learns to come off leash. So when we're training them to do this, we can't be teaching them to come with tension in their leash, because that is a very different feel than having no tension on their collar whatsoever. The other thing too is, for a lot of training, in our training, if we're tightening the leash, that to our dogs means that they've made a mistake and that we're, redirecting them in some way. And in this phase, our dogs aren't making a mistake. We're helping them to be successful. So if my dog's doing a good job coming towards me, I don't want to be applying tight pressure to their leash. Dogs have an opposition reflex. So often if you pull on the leash, their natural reaction is to resist and pull against you. So if your dog's buoying towards you and everything's going great and you start pulling the leash, a lot of dogs slam on the brakes and they pull back and they don't want to come in anymore. So it's really, really important that you keep the leash loose and that you let your dog just jog in or sprint in towards you without any tension on that leash whatsoever. I would say those are the common things about the middle.
Yeah, so I noticed that some people were mentioning that the sound is a little bit low, and what I noticed is that we're really loud right here, but I've boosted the volume of our microphone, our studio mic, in the sort of training area, and we'll see if that helps out a little bit. But bear with us, because we get excited and we talk loud here. So you might be thinking like, wow, it's really loud when they sit in front of the computer, but not so loud back there. So I think I've been able to adjust it a little bit. But I've seen some really good questions come in here, and actually one was, I saw it on the chat that I wanted to answer, but I couldn't find it. Kathy Sosita says, I don't have a helper, but looks like I can do it by myself.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's talk about how she might do that. And let's head over to, can you just jump back in the train station while I run the audio for a second? Also, gives me a chance to toot. So let's see how much louder it is now.
Hi. Come here. Can they see me?
Yep.
Okay, so I just put the leash back on Hippie so that I can show you, hi girly, what this looks like. So if I'm going to do this myself, there's actually two ways that that you can do this. Let me just see if I can be crafty here for a second. Okay, I'm going to show you just on my own first. So what I can do is I'm going to go this way so you guys can see. I have my leash on, and with the hand that's holding the leash, I'm going to hold her collar, and I'm going to, or even put my hand on her chest, and I'm going to push her back so that she can't get to me. Come here, girl. So I'm going to hold on to her. With my other hand, I'm going to tease her with the food. Ready, set. Now what I'm doing with this hand is I'm not only holding, but I'm kind of pushing her away a little bit, and that's to build a bit of resistance and drive. Ready, set, come. Yay! When I say come, I'm going to release her and let her bebop towards me. Good girl, yes. Now, if you have two leashes, we'll see if I can be creative here. The other thing you could do, this is like, no, because I got to do it by myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or unless you want to be my tree leg. You want to be my tree leg?
Yeah.
If you have a chair or a tree, Ken's going to be a really awesome tree right now. So, if he's a tree, open your leg a little bit. I'm going to put one of my leashes around the tree. Okay, if you can see that. And the other leash is going to be in my hand, and I have to be a little bit on the ball here. When I say come, I'm going to let go of the leash that's around the tree. And what this is doing is she can't get to me yet because I'm holding her back. Ready, set, come. Yay. I know. So I'm going to drop that reward, and now my dog can run towards me. And the reason why I like that is I can get a bit of distance. When I was working holding her collar, I'm basically staying about a foot in front of her, and that's great to begin. But if my dog starts to get really good at that step, the next phase would be building distance, and I want to be able to get a little bit further ahead. So you could put your, get like a long line, 25 feet even, and then you really can get a lot more distance. And then again, building that resistance, holding them back just makes such a big difference. Now, you'll notice, again, this phase, we are calling the dog only when they're already looking, because this is the teaching phase. This is not the testing or proofing phase, which is very, very different than what we're showing you here. I am purposefully, oops, get it. I am purposely, I'm purposely setting her up so that she's successful, and this is how we start the exercise. So you might be thinking, well, of course she's going to come. She's, you have food in front of her nose and you're making it really easy. That's the point of this phase. It's to have the dog do it correctly over and over and over again until I have taught her that she should love the word come, because it's such a great game that we play together.
Awesome. So That was a great explanation. In just a few minutes, we're going to get into the much more challenging version, when you're going to level up your recall command for more real-life scenarios. But don't underestimate the value of this point in the training. This is something people often say, like, oh, my dog, they come some of the time. But if that's the case, we want them to come every single time. And it's up to you to assume some of that responsibility. So build some value into that recall.
Restraint recalls is something that we practice all the time, and it's one of my favorite ways to tire out my young dogs. We will do it up and down the hallway. We'll do it in our backyard.
Yeah.
We'll walk our puppy together to the park, and we'll practice, up and down the soccer fields. Both of us will have a toy. One person will hold the dog. The other person will go at a distance, say, come, take off and run, tug with the puppy, hold the puppy, aim them at the other person. And we will just go back and forth, 5, 10, 15 times until the dog's exhausted. And, we come home with a tired, happy dog and a dog that's starting to love the word come.
Absolutely.
It really couldn't be a better scenario.
So remember, we do these live streams for you. So let us know in the chat if you have a question about your recall. Let's jump in to see what some of the people are saying. Lydia Bando says, definitely need this. I got my pup a month ago and he only comes in the house so far. Took him to a tennis court today and let him off the leash. Someone opened the gate and my pup got out. So scary.
Yeah.
So that's a scary and important realization, Lydia. So at this point, until you are absolutely certain that your pup's going to make a great choice, don't let them off leash. Don't allow them that opportunity. Even if you feel very confident and they're dragging the leash, that gives you a lot more control. And it's sort of like it's your safety net in case you need it. Christina Ramsey says, McCann, my training treat bag came in. I love how I can wear it across my body. Yeah. I know, these are great. We just got these things
Mine have these things don't come on them though. I put a monkey and a bee on it because my dog's names are Funky, Monkey, and Beeline. Yours would just come without anything on it. But yeah, these are awesome. They go on like a million different ways. If you're a belt wearer, if you're a yoga pant wearer, whatever.
Oh, they're perfect.
Fits your phone, poop bags, all kinds of stuff.
Mama Lina says, I haven't had to use my emergency recall yet, but he's going through adolescent behavior and I'm worried he won't if needed. And this is a big part of what we're talking about today. So, with this training in Mama Linus, when we step this stuff up in a minute, this is the kind of thing that you can do for months at a time. Like you can really reinforce the fact it's so nice to not need your recall. But it's like a seatbelt. If you have trained a great recall, it's there if you need it. And this is something that I learned when I was, in grade 2, maybe training after I'd done grade 1. I was walking around the McCann Dogs training facility and there's all sorts of acreage there. And Deegan saw a bunny and she started running the bunny. Of course, it went for the gate and there's a big truck going by and I'm thinking I can't believe this is happening. I called come, she turned around, ran back to me, and it was just the greatest feeling. Mm-hmm. But you never know when you're going to need it. So until you reach that point, we literally, with our young dogs, we'll practice this on like every walk. We're
practicing it on a daily basis. And you don't even have to practice for very long. Just a couple minutes a day or a couple times a day goes a long way so that if and when you do have to use it, you have money in the bank because the dogs, this is not a new word. This is not a new concept. But what you don't want to be doing is testing your recall all the time. So we're going to talk to you about the difference between testing and training.
For sure.
So that you start to feel more confident about the exercise.
Liz Whitney says, the recall command, my new German Shepherd dog Bella is 1 year old. She's super smart and knows the basic commands, but ignores my commands when it sounds like off leash, on leash, outside due to distractions help. So this is something we're going to talk in a moment a little bit, Liz, about how you can start to increase the distraction, but you need to go through those exact commands, that same training that you have great responses to when your dog's inside or maybe they're in a less distracting environment, and do those same exercises around those tougher distractions.
We should talk about dogs being leash wise. I don't know when you want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about that now.
So, a lot of dogs are very, very smart. You've probably all figured that out already because you have a dog. They're very brilliant. They're always learning. And dogs are very aware of when they're on leash and when they are off leash. And we've learned through 30 years of dog training now that 35 years, 37 years, however many years, that you have to transition from on leash to off leash very gradually so that it's not this like quick jump because the dogs very, very much notice the difference. So if your recall is going reliable on leash, make sure that it's going very reliably on a loose leash. That's very, very important. So if your dog's leash is tight when you're practicing, there's no way in the world you'll be able to take the leash off and have it work. They must be able to respond on a loose leash without any assistance from you. So without you pulling the leash, without you shaking the treats, they need to know the word on leash with it loose. The next phase would then to be working on a loose leash that's much longer. So the dog's not 6 feet from you, but maybe they're 10 or 20 or 25 feet from you. The next phase would be to drag the leash so that it's there as a backup for you to pick up and use if your dog doesn't respond. And then the next phase would be to wean off of the 25-foot leash to something shorter over weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Usually what I will do is, if I can't remember the last time my dog had a problem, I might cut, 1 or 2 feet off the end of that 25-foot lead. So now I have 20 feet. And then a few weeks after that, I might have a 15-foot leash. And a few weeks after that, a 12-foot leash. And then I just sort of keep going until my dog can just drag a 6-foot leash until, whatever. But how I determine whether my dog is ready to graduate to the next progression is, have I had to insist that my dog responds, or has my response from my dog been 100% reliable? And if that's the case, I'll move on to the next progression. If it's not the case, I have some holes to fill before I move on.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I love this. SD Cruiser, one of our moderators, jumping into the chat. And I like this question because of the way we get to answer it. So does the dog's age play into the success factor of a solid come? So yes. And no. So, yes, if you've done all your formal training and you've sort of left that behind and you never had to use your come again, as your dog gets older, it might be easier for them to forget that skill.
Yeah.
Dog training is such a dynamic process. So, when we're
Once
out for walks
you've
with
done
our
it,
dogs,
doesn't mean it's lasting forever.
Right, exactly. And
dogs aren't robots.
Absolutely. And that's sort of what's so fun about them. You get to face these challenges and do all these different things. But, a reminder, a little refresher session is a great idea. Maybe once a month or once every couple of months.
We've had to do that with our own dogs too.
Sure.
I have my oldest dog is going to be 12 years old soon, and a few months ago I remember saying to him, like, Funky's response is getting a little bit slow. She wasn't ignoring me, but she was sort of taking her sweet time when I was calling her. So I just popped a long line on her and I went through a couple of my reminder exercises, and I think in 2 days, she was like just sharp as ever could be. Yeah. And it just took me a very short time just to get her back on the bandwagon again. And I might have to do it again in a little while, and that's okay. But you don't want to let it slip until it becomes a problem.
It's Christina Ramsey, and this is a common question. Should you work on training when the puppy is a little tired? So something that I did as a student, and something that our students will do, is they'll go and
this is a good question.
They'll give their dog a great play session, or they'll do take them running before they come to class. And what you very quickly learn is that now you have a dog that has great endurance and still doesn't listen. So, Christina, I want you to practice this regardless of, maybe your dog's, it's their first time, maybe you're taking them out for the first time in the morning and, they do their little pee session or whatever. You can practice a couple of these recalls, do it at different times during the day, but don't wait until your puppy is tired. At this point, with what we're just working on, this is before we move up to leveling you guys up, but you are in 100% control. You control every step of this at this point. Mm-hmm. So you can practice this stuff whether your dog's super energetic, really tired, whatever, hungry, not so hungry, all the time. So
because you just never know when you're going to need your recall. If somebody leaves the door open or you're going on a trail walk and all of a sudden your dog takes off on you, if they're not tired and they say, okay, well, I'm hyper, and when I'm hyper, I don't have to come when I'm called. It's really important you're just practicing all of the time.
Absolutely. Patricia says, we practiced our recall in the house, in the backyard. I'm afraid I took her off the long leash too soon, though. And you know what?
It's okay. You can go back.
Yeah, no big deal. In just a moment, we're going to talk about some more advanced skills and how you can sort of take a step back in your training. If it doesn't work once, you've identified a great opportunity for training. And it is so important that you go back and you help your dog to be right. We really want to help our dogs to be successful, and this is how you're going to do
it. And I think it's great that you're even determining that they're there could be like a bit of a fault, because a lot of people just let it go so long that it's much more challenging to fix. So if you're sort of thinking to yourself, I feel my dog could be better at this, that's like a step in the right direction. Just, realizing you have a problem, as they say, is the first step to fixing your problem. So that's great that you're even acknowledging that.
So C. Ellis says, I'll be getting a Great Pyrenees pup soon, and I'm wondering if these teaching concepts will work with the notoriously stubborn and independent breeds. Yeah, this is a great question. We've worked with some, people sort of have some misconceptions about breeds. And part of the challenge is finding the right value reward. What's the right motivator for your dog? We get all kinds of breeds into our training facility. And what the thing you quickly learn is, what is it that's going to motivate your dog to listen? Is it how you use your voice? Is it some of the reward you use? Maybe it's some of the motion, and it has a lot to do with relationships. So CLS, I want you to make sure you check out our leadership training video. That's going to be really helpful, especially for the dogs that people feel may be more stubborn. A lot of that has to do with some of the mistakes, these little tiny mistakes that we make in our training that can add up to be
I think sometimes too, if you are putting a stigma on your dog to say, well, my dog's a husky, so it doesn't come, or my dog's a beagle, so, it just sniffs all the time, you're already going to put yourself behind.
Yeah.
Every dog can learn how to do it. It's about finding the way to make that dog tick. And the thing that's so important to know about dog training, and this is something that I'm so proud of as far as our dog training methods in schools is concerned, is we know there is not just one way to train a dog.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
The goal is to try a couple different things that, of course, line up with one another that suit your fancy. I have done something slightly different with every single one of the dogs that I've trained, and they've all worked great, but sometimes you have to tweak. I have a little toy poodle like Hippie. I had to do things a little bit different with her than I did, my border collie, or Ken had to do with his black lab. So, there's all kinds of things that you can do to help work with the dogs. You certainly don't want to underestimate your dog simply because of a certain breed. They're all capable.
Yeah, Susan Blacksell says, I live in a large property so she can run freely, so it doesn't like the long line, but she walks fine on a leash. Should I take her to the park or somewhere she isn't familiar with? Yes, and Susan, I want you to really think about how important it is to have a great recall, because without control, if she doesn't like the leash, dogs that don't like, some of the toughest dogs are the dogs that you put something like a gentle leader on them, or you change the equipment that you're using and they fuss and kick. Sometimes those are the dogs that need it the most. Yep. So having a little bit more control, Susan, is going to change your training. Even though if your dog doesn't really like dragging the long line, you have the control, and ultimately that's really what you want. You're doing this so that you can afford the freedom to have a reliable recall or a response to name or whatever skill you're working on this big property. So we get lots of people, we're in a relatively rural area. We're sort of on the edge of urban area. And we get lots of people that live on a great big farm and say, my dog's hardly ever on a leash or whatever, but they still see the value in the long line. The same people say, he just wasn't coming when I called, until I started using the long line you guys gave me. So really,
and I think that there's a lot to say about getting your dog out to different locations to practice your training, regardless of whether it's going well or not. Dogs are very situational learners, and they can learn to do something in one location really well, like dog school or like your backyard or your kitchen, whatever it might be. But a truly well-trained dog is a dog that learns to listen and does listen in any situation. So, hopefully you got your dog to, go for a walk on the trail, or to go to the park with your family and go to the soccer games to watch your kids play, or go to the cottage or whatever it is. Dogs are meant to be part of the family, and they need to learn to listen in every location. As Ken was saying, in terms of walking and recalls, our dogs are really used to the environment that's around here. So, we live sort of in outside of a city. So, with our youngest border collie, who's had a little bit of sound sensitivity, a little bit of nervousness around people, things like that, we've made an effort, especially when she was younger, to put her in the car, drive down to the bay, drive down to the, to the city, and go for little walks, and, sit down and have ice cream and have her lay at our feet, watch the people go by, just expose her to more worldly experiences. We went to the park. We practiced our recall at the park down there, just to kind of get her worldly and get her understanding that the rules still apply in different locations. But of course, when we went there, we helped her and we, set her up for success just to build her confidence and to build her love for the exercises.
I see. I've got lots of great questions in the queue. And in fact, there's some really good ones, and I'm going to come back to this because I'd love to go to the leveling up part.
Okay.
Like, let's start to talk about how you at home.
Let's level up.
Once you've seen some success with these building drive,
Ken
building
doesn't think
motivation. I missed it. I was talking.
It wasn't really that funny.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Quick reminder. Hang around because at the end of tonight's train station, Kale and I are going to do a treat stacking challenge. And then Kale's going to have to eat the stacked treats when my stack is taller.
Oh, boy.
So it's a taste test, basically, the dog treat taste test. And they're chicken pot pie. It sounds delicious. I mean,
it's disgusting.
Sounds very good. Okay, let's talk about some leveling up. Let's talk about how you can apply some of your recall training to more real life scenarios. When your dog, so that it's not just about focused on you. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. Going back and building that value is crucial. Really let your dog know that it's a lot of fun to do the recall. It's very valuable to get to you. Build that energy and excitement because when you get to the point we're about to jump into, it's a lot easier. It makes your life a lot easier when your dog truly understands that running to you is the greatest thing that could possibly ever happen. So, what are the steps that we're going to do to start to change that beginning stage for our dog training? We'll make things harder.
Well, what we've been talking about is basically not calling your dog unless they're already paying attention to you so that you don't run into the risk of your dog ignoring the command. But, that's not very realistic. That just sort of gets you started. That builds a lot of drive and value for the exercise. But eventually, you also need to train your dog that when you are distracted and I call you, I expect you to leave that distraction and turn and come to me the first time that I ask. So in order to train that portion of the recall, we have a couple different steps that we use in order to create that immediate response. And in order to do this, we have to be able to have already built value for the word come for many, many, many weeks. And then we also need to make sure that the dog is comfortable on a leash.
Yep.
In order for this phase to work. And we use the process of escape avoidance in order to teach the dog the next phase, where we will use the command come while our dog is distracted, but to ensure that they actually leave the distraction and come towards us, we'll apply a little bit of pressure to the leash, and we refer to this as a pop. We don't pull or drag the dog to hurt them or move them in any way. It's simply a technique that we use on the leash.
Like a long distance tap on the shoulders. Like it's an attention getter.
It's an attention getter. It's a technique that we use with the leash in order to get our dogs to stop what they're doing and turn and look at us. And that buys us the time to build that motivation back in that we already did for weeks and weeks and weeks prior to this to get the dog to run and chase after us. The timing of this is very important.
Well, and this is something we've worked on a little bit, like using these leash pulses and turning the dog around and rewarding them is something we also do with our loose leash walking, which is something we talked about in a previous live stream. So we've built a little bit of value for it. This is where we start to differ from a lot of the stuff you'll see on YouTube, because over the 90,000 dogs that we've trained, we've really learned what's the consistent way to get a great result that is all about motivation and gets that dog excited about the recall. I've seen I don't watch a lot of dog training videos on YouTube, but I've seen some articles and things that talk about, whatever you do, don't try to practice your recall when your dog's distracted. Well, we know that's sometimes...
It's not realistic.
Yeah, that's sometimes the most important thing to train through. So we're going to show you in just a minute how to get that attention from your dog, even when there's a tough distraction out there.
Yeah, and I think it's important to teach you about the pop technique because there's a lot of wrong ways to do it that A, won't be effective, B, could hurt your dog, and they just don't work.
Yeah.
So it's important that we teach you the proper technique because we've used this on so many dogs, and it really works very, very, very well for all dogs, regardless of the size, the breed, the weight, temperament, everything, because it can have small adjustments to the technique to suit the dog that you're training.
Yeah, so Liz mentions that she uses the pop method and the dog still ignores her. Then, Liz, you're not quite using it right, and we're going to show you in just a minute how you can use it to get a little bit more control. Hippie Shake might not be a great demo dog for that, but we can talk a little bit about how you
could be a good demo dog for it.
Maybe, yeah, that's a great idea. So let's get into the beginning when we're leveling up our recall training. Also, I feel like it's time for me to toot.
I don't think it's ever a time for you to toot.
Okay, let's head over to the train station.
Aren't we going to talk about? I guess we can talk about it while we show.
When we come back, yeah, we'll just talk about the beginning, or we can talk a little bit about the middle. In the middle, over there. Let's head on over.
shaking, bacon, shaking, bacon, shaking, bacon, shaking, bacon. Come here, you little cutie.
I guess I can just stay out of the way for now.
Well, maybe you can help me distract her.
Yeah, stay well. It's like
Good girl. Okay.
live.
So
we're live.
This looks similar to the last demonstration we showed you.
I'm a lot less tree-like.
This time what we're going to do is we are going to cause Hippie to be distracted so I can show you about the pop neck technique. Hip, are you looking for some food back there? First thing that I want to do though is just show you the pop technique. Hey, can you just sit for a sec? Sit. Hippie, sit.
Very excited.
Good girl.
Oh, good girl.
Hippie, sit. Good girl. I want to show you the pop technique. So just go a little bit further away from me, honey. So sit. Just wait there for a second. What a lot of people do is they pull the dog towards them. And I talked earlier about how dogs will often just resist. So if you pull, a common thing the dogs will do is just pull against, and then you're sort of in this big tug of war. So the pop technique is simply a pull and a release on the leash. So it looks like this. Pop and release. Pop and release. It can only be done effectively if the leash is loose. If your dog is on a completely tight leash, which will happen when you're practicing the recall because they could be pulling towards a squirrel or a kid on a bike, before you execute the pop, I'm going to do it slowly here so you can see the technique. I would step in to create a little bit of slack and then pop and release. So if I was to do it really quickly, it would look like that. Okay? Step in, pop and release. The other thing that you could also do is sometimes one pop doesn't really cut it, especially if your dog is distracted. So you could also try doing pulses on the leash until your dog turns around. So turn around for a sec. So if my dog was not responding and I said come and I add pulses, I would basically pulse, yay, good boy, until he turned and looked, and then I could praise from there. So I'm really looking to teach my dog that when you feel this on your leash, you need to pay attention. And the way that I train the dog is that after I get a response, I need to really ramp it up with my praise and my reward, because I also don't want him to be worried about getting a pop as well. I want him to understand that it's simply because I want your attention. So if you do this and your dog turns around and you scowl at them and you're angry, your poor dog's going to say, well, I don't like coming to you. You're mean and nasty and you pop me on my leash. So I'm going to do my pop when he turns, woo! I'm going to take off and run and make it a party. And to be honest with you, the reason why I chose Hippie Shake as my demonstration dog is I have trained my other dogs so successfully to love getting a pop that they all bark and go crazy, and I didn't want to upset your households by the dogs barking, and Hippie doesn't do that, so this is why she's our demo dog. But with my other dogs, we've really taught them that the pop is a fun thing.
Yeah.
I felt like you wanted to say something.
No, we're good. We're good. We'll move along.
Okay. So, Ken's going to distract my dog. I'm going to show you this with Hippie. He's going to put some treats on her nose. Now, back to the first couple steps. My leash is loose. I have some of my own treats ready.
That are better than whatever your distraction.
Yep, I have high value. He has about a medium value reward. I'm going to say come, and then I'm going to pop on the leash. And I'm going to wait until Hippie looks at me before I start to praise her. And then I need to make sure I get her more focused on me. So my leash is loose. Come. Yay!
Oh,
good girl. Yes, that was so good, babe. Okay, good girl.
Good. And
I can let her go back
talk
again.
about your timing just for a moment.
So the timing is very, very important here. It is the escape avoidance is I need to give my dog an opportunity to avoid getting a little pop if she comes when she's called. So if I was to walk up to Ken and do this, duck, and hit him at the same time as I told him to duck out of the way, that would be very unfair of me. And if I was to do this, you're too smart, duck, and tell him afterwards, that would also be extremely unfair. But if I did this, duck, good dog, good boy, and he moved out of the way, then he would have an opportunity. So my goal is that if I say come, pause, pop, come, pause, pop, come, pause, pop, eventually your smart dog is going to say, how do I avoid getting that little pop on my leash? I bet if I turn on the word, I'll avoid it. So there needs to be a little pause. We often suggest to our students to say the word then in their head. Come, then pop. My dog has an opportunity to beat the pop, and I'm hoping that in these demonstrations, Hippie might even do that once so that you can see what it looks like. So she's a little bit distracted. I'm going to say come, and then 1 second later, I'm going to pop and see what she does. Come. Yay!
Good girl.
Good girl. So I still felt a little bit of a pulse on the leash there. Yes, that was so good, babe. Excellent. Yes.
You wanna try
Okay.
one more?
I'm out of food now.
Okay.
I can get more though.
Yeah. So here, I'll give you this.
Here, Shakes.
Try this.
I need more than one treat. You're stingy,
Okay.
man.
I was gonna get you a better treat.
Okay, here. Come on, try to get. Oh, I think she might do it.
Hippie.
She says, Mama, I'm ready.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Go see the distraction. Comes. Yay! Holy cow, that was like whiplash. So that was such a great response that I'm going to give her a jackpot. Hippie, Shake, you're the smartest little poodle I ever see. Good girl. So good. How about good girl? So that is exactly why that timing works so well. Not only do you get a dog that responds, but they respond really quickly. And again, never at any time was my dog worried or upset because I'm doing this in a very positive, motivating way. And previous to this step, I've already practiced for weeks on building the value of the word come, building the value of coming towards me so that is the portion of the exercise that she is the most excited about. That was so good, little girl.
Great. Okay. Let's head on back over here to the train station. I see some great questions and comments coming into the chat. So that beginning, you saw how quickly Hippie Shake learned to figure out that turn, to figure
So
out that
fast,
timing. It's
too.
so very important. Dan mentions maybe this is a good time to, this is a couple great questions from both of our moderators. So let's talk about Dan Luton says the value of a leather leash versus a nylon leash.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yep.
Yeah, so we are big lovers of a leather leash. A couple of really important reasons why we use leather over nylon. Number one is it's much more comfortable in your hands. Nylon leashes, especially if you're dealing with a dog that pulls a lot or is a bit out of control, can burn the inside of your hand really easily. The second reason is that leather has a bit more give to it than nylon. So it reduces the impact on your shoulders, on the dogs. There's a bit of a give and release in the leash, and it's much longer lasting. Some of the leashes that I have, I've been using for the last 20 years, and they get even better with age. They get soft and comfortable in your hands. We sell some fabulous leather leashes that come in different widths, so we just match the width of the leash to the appropriate size based on the weight of the dog and the clip size. So, a leather leash for Hippie would have a little clip on it so it wouldn't weigh her down as she was walking. So yeah, leather leashes are definitely the way to go.
Stay tuned because at the end of this train station, Kale's gonna eat some gross.
No, I'm not.
dog
I'm
treats.
not. Ken's going to.
SD Cruiser, and we should have mentioned this, but says, does the type of a collar or harness affect the effectiveness of the pop technique? I would assume a head harness would not be ideal.
That's a good
dog
question.
trainer.
Yeah. So yes, there certainly are certain harnesses, things like that we would not encourage you to practice on. We don't really suggest you do any dog training on a harness whatsoever. Harnesses really encourage pulling, and you're not going to get very good methods when the leash is attached to the middle of the back versus the neck.
It's nice to have head control, especially when you're working on the come, because you want to be able to turn your dog a little bit. If they're really distracted, you can guide them around, and then you can practice your recall. The other thing I should mention very quickly is if your dog is pointed directly away from you, get a little bit of angle on that when you're using your pulses or your pops, so that you're not pulling directly down your dog's back.
If you have a dog that wears a head halter, we suggest using a gentle leader as a head halter. Our golden rule is you can pop on a gentle leader. It actually makes it more gentle than the neck. However, once you get past that 6 foot distance, we no longer suggest that you practice this exercise on a head halter. You want to have something that's attached to the dog's neck for safety.
The flat collar.
A flat collar.
Yeah.
There's no need to use a chain collar or anything like that. We're not really big advocates of those types of training equipment. No. We just want you to have the dog on just a well-fit flat buckle collar. And if you're using a head halter, that's fine. But if you're starting to build distance greater than 6 feet, then you're going to want to practice on just your regular
For
collar.
sure. And actually, the gentle leader, which we've talked about in some videos, but one of the reasons we love it is you can transition off of it really easily.
Just lift the nose
so you
piece
slip
off.
the nose loop down, and then you clip the your clip to the flat part, the flat buckle on the gentle leader with
Yep.
the nose loop included. And I mean, just like that, you have a flat buckle collar. Lydia Bando asked a great question. How long do you stay in the teaching phase before moving on to the testing phase? My puppy will sit and stay, and I say, come, he'll run to me, but only in the house. He doesn't do it outside.
Well, it could mean that you might be able to move along a little bit more in the house, and you might need to go back to earlier stages of your training outside. Outside provides way more distractions than inside, so it's certainly not uncommon for dogs to have more struggles outside than inside. It's just important that, to know to go on to the next phase, your dog's going to answer that question for you, because if they're giving you good attention, reliability in their response, they're motivated, they're eager to come towards you, they're reliable, then you'll be able to move on to the next phase. But you don't want to go from like step 1 and just like skip all the steps and go right to testing to step 10. We want you to follow that nice gradual progression, with the long line that we were talking about before, so that you don't have any holes in your training that you have to go back and fix later.
Yeah, I noticed Dan mentioned, can you show the proper technique for holding a leather leash? I think we might come back to that. Yeah. Morgan F says, where can we ask and submit questions? Well, this is the place.
Right here.
Perfect timing. So let's talk about the middle. So as you've created that challenge, you've had your dog distracted, you've used your recall command, and you've got them turned towards you. One of the most important parts is that time between the moment they make that turn. Kale used a great example of marking that moment and encouraging your dog in, but there's lots of opportunity for your dog to get distracted now because you're starting to work farther away. Maybe you're in a more distracting environment.
Yeah, so when I was showing you with Hippie there, I was only working, 6 feet from her there. I only had a 6-foot leash on there. And once you've mastered that, then you want to build to having a bit further away. And we recommend that you get yourself a really long line. We really love to use cotton web lines when we're practicing this because we have great control, easy on your hands as you start to build distance. So you can start to build distance gradually that way. And as you start to build distance further away from your dog, you're now opening up more possibility for your dog to get distracted, on the way to you. So, we teach our dog a behavior called leave it. And that is a command that we use to ask our dog to look away from distractions or to leave distractions alone. I'm sure our buddy Dan will share it.
I had a feeling we were going to talk about this, but if you click the card, there's a card up there.
Oh,
there's also the leave it video, and I know Dan the man's probably going to drop that in the chat, but there is if you click that, you'll see a list of videos that you can watch, and leave it is one of them.
Yeah.
The other thing you want to be doing, using motion, really moving away from your dog, be exciting, really build. It's all about drive, and this is a great opportunity to move away from your dog to build that drive toward you.
Yeah. So the leave it can be helpful. Of course, you need to train the leave it before you use it with your recall. You can't just say it and hope that it works.
Yeah.
You have to train it first. But the leave it's really important. Running away is really important, as Ken said. Making sure that you have something motivating. You could pull out food at this point. You could pull out toys at this point to get your dog to chase after you. But there's a couple things that are really important before you do this. And number one, again, don't forget about the leash. Leash needs to be loose. You need to be standing up tall. We don't want to be giving the dogs any pre-cues that we're about to call them.
Yeah.
We call this exercise the random recall because we're randomly calling the dog without them expecting it to come. So it's as realistic as possible. So if your leash is tight or you're bending over or your hand's sticking out or you're nodding your head or any of those things that your dogs could be picking up on, you want to be careful that you have a nice neutral body posture.
Yeah, dogs are so perceptive, and they will see, if you are standing a few feet behind them, they will see you do this just before you say come, because you're doing it likely every time. Come! And your dog thinks, oh, there's the turn. As you saw Hippie shake how quickly she figured that out, you'll see that same sort of thing happen when you start to bend over or you start to back away. So make sure that word happens first and you don't telegraph it. You don't give your dog any indication that it's going to happen. Now, it is really important that your dog comes all the way to you. And something that people often overlook is how important the ending is. Now, we sort of think of the come command and we envision the dog running towards us and then getting to us, but it's imperative that your dog understands to come in front of you and sit and just remain there. And it's all part of that recall. because imagine you're at some crazy busy environment with maybe like there's other dogs around or something. There's something happening. You need your dog to come to a point where you can take hold of them, or they can come in. You can clip on a leash, or you need them to come to you so that you can, do whatever you need to do.
Just get control.
Yeah, rather than just checking in for a moment, getting a treat, and then taking off.
We call it the doggy drive-through.
Yeah, no doggy drive-throughs there.
No doggy drive-throughs.
No.
Dogs come in, they get what they want, and then they take off without having to pay off with control.
Yeah, so do you want to show really quickly a couple of the things in terms of that ending? Just show off the ending a little bit. You can do it with your 6-foot leash. This is something that we often talk to our students about. You can practice the ending of your recall anywhere, anytime. You can practice that come with a little pop or pulse, bring the dog in, and then pay out with them. The one thing, and Kale's gonna head on over. I'm gonna get to Toot, and we're gonna head on over to the train station. But the one thing you need to be really aware of is your leash tension. Make sure you're not holding your dog in position, because in this actual scenario, and I know a lot of you are probably thinking like, this is my problem. My dog doesn't come in and sit and remain in position because I'm trying to help them to be successful by holding them there. Your dog needs to choose. They need to make the choice to remain in position. You need a great history of reinforcement for them sitting in front of you with being rewarded, for them to really understand, especially when they don't have a collar on, or especially when they don't have a leash on, because you don't have that kind of control in maybe one of these real scenarios. With no further ado, let's head on over to the train station.
Okay, so just a couple things. When I'm practicing my sit in front, again, I want to make sure I bring my dog very close to me before I encourage her to sit. The other thing that common thing that people do is they bend over the dog like this. And when you bend over the dog, you're really not making yourself look like much of a leader. Stand up tall so you have better control. Dogs will be much more settled and relaxed at that point. The other thing that's really important is that you're encouraging your dog to pay good attention to you. If I take all of these pieces of food and I reward her like this, yes. Basically, I'm teaching her to give me zero attention because her head's all the way down. So what we like to say is stand up, hands up. Remember that, stand up, hands up. So I'm going to draw her in close, sit, good girl. I'm going to stand up, bring my hands up, because when my hands come up, my attention from my dog comes up, yes. And I actually love to feed my dog from my face. Yes, good girl. Good girl, yes. And a rewarder, because this keeps the eye contact, yes, on me. If you happen to be wearing a bait pouch at the time, try not to feed directly from your pouch to your dog, because that makes the pouch the special thing. Bring the food up to your face. Yes, good girl. And I mentioned this before, but I want to make sure that she's comfortable with me taking a hold of her. So if I have to hook a leash on, this is another thing we'll do. I'm just going to drop my leash and step on it. I might take another leash. Wait there for a sec, Missy. And I might practice hooking the leash on. So she gets used to hearing that sound. Can she hold the sit? Yes. Good girl. As she hears the leash come on, I might take it off. Yeah. She hears it clip. I'm going to reward her. Good. I'm going to clip it on. Yes. Good girl. That's an exercise I would practice. And you'll notice Hippie Shake is still maintaining the sit, and that's because with our training, when we teach them to hold a position, they need to wait for a release command. So she knows she's not actually allowed to move until she hears the magic word, and that word is okay. Good girl. Once she hears okay, then she knows she's allowed to get up from there. That way, she's not up to her to decide how long she's going to stay sitting in front of me. That's up to me, and I can make her do it for just a few moments. Or maybe I want to stand and talk to somebody for a second. Or if I need, to pick a bunch of stuff off the ground, my dog will sit calmly and wait for me to release her. So I have good control and I can keep her safe. Good girl. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't know why I keep hitting. I have a button to bring us back over to the main camera, and that's the second time I've done that. But you know what? I do love that animation, and that's actually Hippie Shake that you guys just heard.
So
that's
cute.
barking in that video. Just there's a little tidbit of information. So keep in mind, your recall includes all of this. Includes that beginning, that middle, and that ending, regardless of what point you're at. So it's your dog's responsibility to sit in position and be rewarded, just to remain there. Don't overlook the value of that, and don't be in a hurry to end it. Don't be in a hurry to feed them a couple times, then okay, and away you go. Really drag out that ending, because as Kel mentioned, maybe there's a situation where they need to just hang out there. It's also a great opportunity to reinforce them for doing something really, really great. Now, I know you guys have been waiting all show to watch Kale eat gross dog treats. But
I'm not doing it, just so you know.
we'll see. We'll see what's actually about to happen. We're into overtime now. This is definitely overtime at this point.
Hippie shake, you have to go off my lap.
So Mark Hudak has a quick question. I want to answer this before we move on. He says, my wife and I have a 3-month-old puppy. We're trying to get him to teach the settle command. We're having a hard time getting him to settle when he interacts with other dogs. Mark, I can tell you with great confidence that if that's one of your challenges, don't allow your puppy to interact with other dogs.
Yet?
Not yet. Yeah, absolutely. Not now. This is something that you're going to work towards for sure. All of our dogs can hang out together, but when they're little puppies, they don't get that that competition. Sorry, I got distracted by SD Cruiser. What was I saying now? Oh, they find those other dogs so rewarding that you need to really be focused on them listening to you. Get your puppy to listen to you first, and then allow them to have some time with those other dogs. When you have a reliable recall, a leave it, all of those things that where you've found that you're really valuable, then you can start to socialize your dog with other dogs. Actually, about a week ago, or maybe 2, we dropped a video on the channel talking about what's the best way to introduce your dog to other dogs, and I don't know whether Dan can drop a link to that in the chat. But introducing your dog to other dogs is part of the dog training process. But there's a bunch of benchmarks you need to hit before you get there. I see everybody's excited to see the.
Kale, you're a world champ. This is pocket change for you. I'm a world champion at dog agility, not stacking treats.
Oh, and SD Cruiser says, "Are they homemade treats? It can't be that bad." I guess we're about to find out.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I like this. Let's go for it. I don't really know how. We didn't really pre-plan this very well.
How is the camera going to see what we're doing?
So I'm going to bring it up to this level. Now, I'd love to know in the chat right now, who do you think is going to win the dog treat, training treat stacking championships? Who's
Obviously,
going to win?
it's going to be me, or it's going to be Ken, because he probably cheated and he practiced before the live
No,
stream
absolutely
went
not.
on.
Absolutely not. I showed Kale the container of treats. They were unopened. We aren't getting paid by these guys, so we probably shouldn't show the.
Why did you select these?
Because they're a light colored treat and I needed them.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh my God, this is so silly.
This is going to be.
What are we
this is gonna be
stacking
great.
it on?
We are. Oh, I like Shandy Blake's comment there.
What? Tip for a happy marriage: let your wife win.
Okay.
Kale all the way. Oh, I love that these guys are on my team. You guys rule.
Wow, look at this. Yeah, there's a mountain.
I'll try not to let you down, guys.
Okay, what's the best way to get this thing in like the camera line so that these guys can all see?
I think you should put it closer.
Okay. Is that going to work for you guys? This way?
Sorry, our stool's dirty, everyone.
Okay. So I think that'll work. So I'm also going to need a timer.
I want to take a look at these things. Can we practice?
Okay.
Can we select the ones that we want to use?
No. So we're just gonna put. I'm gonna put a bunch of these out here. Now remember, what's on the line here? You gotta be wondering. So we're gonna have a treat stacking. We're gonna have a treat stacking competition, and the loser has to eat the other person's treat stack. The stack of treats.
They're also not flat, guys. They're not flat.
This is gonna be. I don't even know if they will stack, but that's part of the fun of the live stream. So.
I love a competition.
I love winning. Okay. So, there's no rules about this.
Now,
there are no
what
rules.
is it? It's 1 minute?
Yeah, I'll set out a timer right here.
So, the strategy is, do you try to just go for it, or do you just wait for the other person to screw up and just make sure yours are going?
Interesting. Okay.
See, I'm a strategist. That's how it became a world
I see some tips coming into the chat already.
See. Where?
Ready?
No.
Set,
Stop.
And...
No. I want to read the tips.
No, there's no tips. I should
make a square shape. What's the rules that way? Do they have to go one on top of each other?
You know what? I think so. That's probably because I think we can just stack.
SD Cruiser, I like the way you think, buddy.
That was really smart, SD Cruiser. I was thinking that too. Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
In 3, 2, 1, go.
You have stubby fingers. This is going to be hard for you.
Well, these aren't easy to stack. What do you think, guys? I think I'm making progress. Look at.
Uh-oh.
Oh, boy. Oh, no. Oh, I've completely undone my stack.
Don't move the stool, hon.
I didn't mean to. Now, you should know at home, these are chicken pot pie flavored.
Don't move the stool.
Sorry.
One hand.
They
You're
sound.
being a cheater.
I love chicken pot pie, but I don't know if I.
Did I start again?
I don't know. Oh yeah, I don't know if I love chicken pot pie, dog treats. I have the dexterity of a baby elephant too.
He does. He
That's
also
not gonna
walks like a baby elephant.
Look at that. Look at. Oh man.
What are you at?
Your
5?
stack is getting higher. Oh no. Do I go for it? Do I just wait for Kales to crash?
Something's not right here. What am I at? Oh shit.
Oh, can't swear. Yay!
No!
Yay!
Oh, what? Oh, look. Only
okay.
3 are up.
You only have 2.
Okay, well, I only have to eat 3.
Oh man! Wait! That was so much fun. I think
eat them.
every week we should have some sort of fun challenge
I
like that.
cannot believe I just lost.
Look at that! Look at the chat just lighting up. Ken for the win. I agree. Dan and whoever else said that. That was fun. And here's the important part: is
rematch with no talking.
well,
Good point.
I was a little distracted.
Also, he wiggled the bench like a million times.
I did. Luckily, that would have definitely been cheating had it been a had it done anything. So before we see Kale eat these gross dog treats, I want to mention that they are supposed to be chicken pot pie flavored. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever tasted dog treats before.
I ate dog food all the time when I was a kid.
That's disgusting. And
I think Ken was breathing on your stack. Yeah, I think Ken was doing a lot of things wrong. That may have been
the case. But I feel like they never taste what they say they are. But with
I think Ken should go get me a glass of wine to put these down with.
Maybe I will. Let's not waste any time. Let's see what these treats taste like. Go ahead, Ken.
Do I do them one at a time or all the way at the same time?
There is a massive dog hair on one of them. So I'll get that little guy off there. Okay, when you're ready, Kale, we're all waiting.
They're actually not that bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Try
one.
No.
No, honestly, they taste like cookies.
I was the winner. I didn't have to eat them. What do they taste like?
They taste like they taste like a cookie. I'm not lying. Honestly, try one.
Next time we will get grosser flavors, but I think that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me win. So I'm glad you could all be here for that. I hope you guys had a
try one.
No, I hope you guys enjoyed the maybe next time if I lose, but I'll have to lose first. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode today. We have tons of videos on the channel that can help you to teach your dog to come on command. And if this is your first time here, we publish videos every single week. Most of them don't include us eating anything gross, but to help you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member. So make sure you smash that subscribe button so you can hang out with us. I want to thank everybody for being here. We had a great audience tonight. Tons of really good questions.
Good questions, guys.
Big, huge thank you to Dan, the moderator man.
Did you forget your question of the day?
As well as SD Cruiser. No, we did have it on there.
Okay.
As well as SD Cruiser for helping us out. And Dan, the moderator man, dropping links like a champ.
I'm drinking water with just like Mio in it. It's not even exciting. Ken was supposed to get me wine, but he didn't.
I don't even remember that. On that note, we have videos up here. We have links in the description. We talked a little bit about a long line. I think we might have one on our Amazon store that you can check that out. I'm not sure that there is one there for sure, but long line was a popular topic tonight. So if that's something that you're interested in, grab one. It's going to help you in your training.
Go train your dogs, everyone.
And have fun. On that note, I'm Ken.
I'm Cal.
Happy training, guys. Thanks for watching.